Chapter 1. Nexus Station, Crossroads of Chaos. Listen up, folks, because you're not going to believe the sheer circus I stumbled into that day at Nexus Station. The universe has a knack for making fools of us all, doesn't it? Oh, where are my manners? The name's Zorak Veltrin, former Chief Security Officer of the Galactic Transit Authority, or at least I was until everything went sideways. But we'll get to that juicy bit later. For now, picture Nexus Station, the so-called crossroads of civilization. More like the crossroads of chaos. If you ask me, it's a massive spinning wheel of a space station, dangling like some gaudy ornament at the intersection of 7 major hyperspace lanes. A testament to the galaxy's ability to mash together the designs of 17 different species and somehow make it work. Every rotation, nearly 300,000 beings from across the galaxy flood through our docking bays. The main concourse? Imagine the busiest marketplace in the universe tossed into a blender with a refugee crisis and a diplomatic summit. The smell alone, by the 7 moons of Pranis. You haven't lived until you've choked on the olfactory assault of mulgar sweat mixed with Trescal spices and whatever slimy goo those gelatinous Boreans excrete when they're nervous. The announcement system blares non-stop in 26 languages, half of them sounding like someone's gargling gravel or strangling a Zulian harp. Next departure, Center Hub, Bay 94, final boarding call, over and over. And tell your antennae twitch in surrender. That day, I was 14 hours into a 12-hour shift because my replacement, a lazy Grax named Kaleth, conveniently decided it was molting season again. Funny how that always happens when the Rexathar luxury cruisers dock. I was stationed at the security post overlooking the diplomatic lounge, a fancy name for an overcrowded, overpriced box where self-important ambassadors and attaches wait for their shuttles while sipping fermented drinks that cost more than my monthly stipend. The place was packed, thanks to some big-shot conference on Center Prime. Every VIP in the sector was scrambling to attend. And the lounge was a zoo. Vex P diplomats chittered about their ancient protocols. Gedan collective reps swayed in creepy unison. And a threshing envoy sprayed spittle every time he argued, which was often. Here's what gets my 4 eyes rolling. The hierarchy. We pretend everyone's equal in this grand galactic community. But the second resources get tight, the masks slip. Vex P with their 12.000-year diplomatic legacy snag the best seats. Gedans send 15 reps when one would do, just to flex their hive mind nonsense. Threshings demand special atmospheric pods because apparently regular air isn't good enough for their precious lungs. And humans? The new kids, barely 30 rotations into the Galactic Council, get the short end of every stick. Most species see them as fragile, emotional, and unpredictable, cute little curiosities at best. I watched it all from my security station. Screens buzzing with facial recognition pings and threat assessments. Thinking I had it all figured out. Oh, how gloriously wrong I was. Then she walked in, a human female, nothing special at first glance. Average height for her kind, tiny compared to a Vex P, short brown hair, tanned skin, and that flat, featureless face humans have. No mandibles, no sensory ridges. Just how do they even express themselves? Baffling. She wore a standard-issue Terran Defense Force uniform, olive green with minimal insignia. No weapons thanks to station rules. Her posture was straight but relaxed, radiating nothing important, which, in the diplomatic lounge, made her practically invisible. "Excuse me," she said, approaching the transit desk where Zorak Zindar, a draconian with an ego the size of a small moon, was arranging shuttle seats. "I need passage on the next transport to Center Prime. Beta priority." Zorak didn't even look up from his console, his green scales glinting under the lights. "Beta priority?" he sneered, his voice dripping with disdain as his frilled neck quivered. "The shuttle's overbooked with Alpha Plus dignitaries. Perhaps tomorrow's transport suits your status better." The way he said status was a masterclass in contempt. And the room noticed. The Vex P chittered with amusement, their 14 legs tapping the floor. The Gedan trio swayed like they were enjoying a private joke. Even I smirked from my perch. Tharok's delivery was too good. The woman, Lyra Vexen. My scanner pinged, didn't flinch. No outburst, no human emotional meltdown. Just calm, sir, she said evenly. My orders are to reach Center Prime before the summit begins. Beta priority authorizes. Zorak cut her off, his neck frills flaring dramatically. Do you know who's on this shuttle? The Grand Envoy of the Vex P Dominion. 3 Gedan ambassadors, a Zulian technocrat, and you think your beta trumps their needs? The lounge erupted in laughter. A threshing envoy sprayed his drink through his breathing slits. And I chuckled over my comms to Trix, my assistant. Watch this. Humans learning their place. Zorak kept going, clearly loving the audience. Your species has been in galactic society for what? 3 decades? The beings here represent civilizations that were starfaring while your ancestors were grubbing in dirt. More laughs. Lyra just stood there, patient as a stone in a storm. Very well, she said with a slight nod, pulling a small ident chip from her uniform. My sensors pinged, standard procedure, but she only logged her request. Please record that Diplomatic Transport Request District of Columbia 1147 was denied at 1427 station time by diplomat Zorak Veltrin. Thank you for your time. She stepped back, sat down in the waiting area. And that should have been it. Just another human taught their spot in the pecking order. I leaned back, sipping my Trescal, muttering to Trix, look at her, sitting there like patience is her superpower. What a waste. The lounge returned to its buzz. Zorak preening, the VIPs boarding. I figured I'd seen the end of it. If only I'd known that in about 20 minutes, everything I thought I understood about humans, galactic politics, and my own career would flip upside down faster than a Grax shedding its skin. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Stick around, because you wouldn't believe what happened next if I didn't tell you myself. Chapter 2. Signs of Trouble. Alright, folks. If you thought Nexus Station was just a glorified parking lot for the galaxy's elite, with a few pompous diplomats arguing over shuttle seats, then you've got another thing coming, and it's not a free round of Trescal either. I'm Zorak Veltrin, once the big shot keeping this spinning chaos wheel in line, and I'm here to tell you that Nexus is more than a transit hub, it's a living, breathing mess where every corner could either kill you or make you wish it had. After Lyra Vexen, that human soldier with the patience of a saint, got publicly dunked on by Zorak Veltrin in the diplomatic lounge, I figured the day would just slog on like usual. Oh, how naive I was. Let me paint you a fuller picture of Nexus Station. Because if you don't get the lay of the land, you'll never grasp how everything spiraled out of control. Beyond the fancy pants lounge, there's the dark market. A grimy underbelly where Gedan traders hawk banned tech and Mulgar spice merchants swap their wares for anything shiny. I once saw a threshing try to buy a faulty plasma rifle down there. It blew up in his face, spraying spittle everywhere, and I spent a week scrubbing the stench from my memory. Then there's the Eco Garden, a glowing glass dome for species who need special air, where the plants shimmer and the atmosphere's so thick it makes my head spin. And don't get me started on the tongue arena, no weapons. Just diplomats yelling at each other until someone gives up or loses their mind. I watched a Vex P and a Draconian go at it for 17 hours once. The Draconian smashed a table to end it. Art, pure art. That day, after Zorak's little show, I was still holed up in the security post, 4 eyes glued to the screens. The lounge was a riot of amusement. Vex P chittering like they'd just heard the galaxy's best joke. Gedan reps swaying in sync like creepy puppets. And Zorak preening with his frilled neck puffed out. Basking in his moment, Lyra sat in the waiting area, hands clasped, staring into space. I figured she'd sit there all day, proving some pointless human point about endurance. Poor thing, I muttered to Trix, my bug-eyed assistant. She's got no idea how this game works. Then my console beeped. A short, encrypted signal flashed across the screen like a pesky fly caught in a plasma net. It came from a threshing ship docked at Bay 87, not unusual. Since threshings love sending junk signals to mess with us. More of their nonsense, I grumbled, swatting the alert away. Trix perked up from his corner. Want me to check it, Chief? Nah, I snapped. We've got enough on our plate with these VIPs. Let the techs handle it. If I'd known that decision would come back to bite me like a starving Klytheron beast, I'd have sent Trix running. But I didn't, yet. Minutes later, The console screeched again, and this time, the source code made all 4 of my antennae stand on end. GCDF Command Actual, Galactic Council Defense Force Central Command. Not your everyday, check the schedule, ping, but the kind that makes you straighten your uniform and pray your buttons are aligned. Chief Zorak Veltrin. The message read, confirm status and location of Special Envoy Lyra Vexen immediately. Priority transport to Center Summit. Respond within 60 seconds. I nearly dropped my Trescal mug. Special Envoy? That tiny human sitting out there like she's waiting for a late bus? I scrambled to pull up the passenger manifest, fingers fumbling over the keys. Her file popped up, blocked by a pulsing red encryption layer. Omega clearance. Omega. That's higher than the Vex P Grand Envoy. Reserved for Council Crisis reps. My 4 palms started sweating. A rare feat for my species. Tricks. I barked. Pull everything we've got on humans. Now. He stumbled over to his terminal, tapping away while I racked my brain for what I knew about these weird newcomers. Humans joined the Council 30 rotations ago, showing up in a ramshackle ship that looked like it'd fall apart if you sneezed on it. The Zulian delegate asked if they wanted a participation trophy, classic humor. They hailed from a backwater system, a planet with brutal gravity 1.3 times the galactic norm and an atmosphere that'd cook most species without mods. Yet humans thrived there, their bones dense as steel, their kids strong enough to snap a Borean's arm without breaking a sweat. I'd dismissed it as exaggerated xenobiology chatter. But now, here, Chief, Trix piped up, pointing at his screen. Newbies, but adaptable, not the best at anything, but decent at everything. Council pegged them for extinction or subjugation within 50 rotations. Yet they're trading with 17 species and even brokered peace between Misaki and Thorians by, get this, telling them to talk it out. He shrugged. Weirdos. Weird didn't cover it. I glanced back at the lounge feed. Lyra still sat there, but now I saw it. Her posture wasn't just patience. It was coiled, like a predator biding its time. Had I underestimated her? Underestimated humans? All right, Trix, I said, forcing my voice steady despite the panic clawing at me. Head out there. Bring, Lieutenant Vexen in here. Say I need to verify her transport docs. Nice and easy. Don't tick her off. Trix nodded and bolted, his lanky frame weaving through the lounge crowd. I punched a reply to GCDF, Special Envoy Lyra Vexen at Nexus Station. Diplomatic Lounge. Verifying now. But as it sent, another signal blinked. The threshing ship at Bay 87 again. Stronger this time. I frowned, zooming in on the data. Something was off. I should have checked it sooner. But my gut was too busy screaming that Lyra Vexen wasn't just some grunt, and whatever was brewing. It was bigger than a missed shuttle. If I'd known what was about to hit, I'd have locked myself in the dark market and called it a day. But no, I was still Zorak Veltrin, chief of nothing yet everything. And the galaxy was about to teach me a lesson I'd never forget. Chapter 3. Lyra's Past. Here's the thing, folks. If I'd known that telling a human to sit tight after being laughed out of the diplomatic lounge would lead to me, Zorak Veltrin, sweating through all 4 palms and questioning my entire career, I'd have taken up spice trading in the dark market instead. But there I was, stuck in the security post at Nexus Station, staring at Lyra Vexen, the human soldier who, according to GCDF Command Actual, wasn't just some grunt but a special envoy with Omega clearance. My console was lighting up like a Borean fire dance with messages demanding her whereabouts. And I'd just sent Trix, my bug-eyed assistant, to fetch her under the flimsy excuse of verifying transport docs. I figured she'd be annoyed, maybe even throw one of those human tantrums I'd heard about. Nope, she was too calm. And that scared me more than a threshing tantrum ever could. Trix shuffled into the lounge, dodging a Vex P diplomat who was chittering about seat assignments and a Gedan trio muttering in eerie unison. Tharik Zindar, the Draconian who'd turned Lyra into the day's entertainment, was still at the transit desk, his frilled neck quivering with smug satisfaction as the VIPs boarded. Lyra sat in the waiting area, hands clasped, eyes fixed on nothing. I watched through the feed, expecting her to sulk. Instead, she looked expectant, like she knew something I didn't. And trust me, I was starting to realize I didn't know much. "Excuse me, ma'am," Trix said, his voice wobbling like a hatchling facing a predator. "Chief Zorak Veltrin requests a moment. Just, a small clarification on your travel docs." Lyra looked up, flashing that unnerving human smile, too subtle to read, too calm to trust. "Of course," she said, rising smoothly. "Is there a problem, officer?" Trix shook his head so fast I thought it'd pop off. "No problem, just routine." I winced over the comms. "Trix, you idiot, don't make it worse." She followed him back to the security post, glancing around the lounge, not with curiosity, but with the sharp sweep of someone scanning for threats. By the time she stepped through my door, I was on my feet, 4 hands fumbling to straighten my uniform. "Lieutenant Vexen, sorry, just need to check something about your transport request," I stammered, aiming for authority but landing somewhere near panic. "A little mix-up, that's all." Lyra nodded, sitting across from me without waiting for an invite. "It'll clear up soon," she said, her gaze locking onto mine. No defiance, no arrogance, just a quiet certainty that made me want to shrink into my chair. I opened my mouth to press her, but she leaned back, eyes half closing like she was drifting somewhere else. And in that moment, I had no idea she was revisiting a past that'd explain why she stood so steady while the galaxy laughed. Lyra Vexen wasn't always the unshakable envoy I met that day. 20 rotations ago, she was an orphan on Earth, a planet that'd chew up and spit out most species without a second thought. Gravity 1.3 times standard, air thick with pressure, solar storms that'd fry a draconian in minutes. Earth was a crucible. And Lyra was forged in it. Her parents died when she was 8, caught in a brutal skirmish with the Klytheron Syndicate, a band of interstellar pirates who preyed on fledgling colonies. The attack left her scavenging through the wreckage of a Terran outpost. A skinny kid with bones like steel and a will that refused to break. She survived on grit until a chance encounter changed everything. Kalith Zorvin, a Zulian diplomat, was on a mission to negotiate with the Council when his ship got ambushed by Klytheron raiders near Earth's system. Lyra, armed with a scavenged plasma pistol, stumbled across the fight, 8 years old, barely taller than the gun. She took down 2 Klytheron grunts to shield Kalith, shots so precise they'd make a Vex P sniper jealous. Kalith, stunned by her courage, took her in as his adopted daughter, raising her in the cutthroat world of galactic diplomacy. But one memory burned deeper than the rest. As a teenager, trailing Kalith to a minor summit, she met Tharek Zindar, a young draconian official back then, all scales and swagger. Spotting her in a trainee uniform, he sneered, "What's a weak little human whelp doing here? Crawl back to your mudball planet where you belong." His entourage roared with laughter. And Lyra, fists clenched, stayed silent. She swore that day to make fools like him eat their words, not with violence, but by proving humanity's worth on the galaxy's grandest stage. Back in the security post, Lyra snapped her eyes open as I coughed to regain her attention. "About that transport," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "Seems there was a misunderstanding with diplomat Zindar." I didn't finish. My console erupted with alerts. Center Prime Ministry, confirm Special Envoy Vexen's status. Jeden High Council, transport delay? Zulian technocracy, Threshing Consortium, all piling in like a swarm of angry Rexathar. I stared at Lyra. She shrugged. "Like I said, Chief, it'll clear up soon." Before I could respond, another signal blipped, stronger, sharper. From that threshing ship at Bay 87. I zoomed in, heart sinking. It wasn't threshing. A Klytheron warship had just dropped out of hyperspace, lurking less than an astronomical unit from Nexus. Klytheron never sent warships to neutral stations. They were raiders, not diplomats. Unless... Chief Veltrin? Lyra's voice cut through, sharper now. "Something wrong?" I glanced between her and the screen, sweat beading on my antennae. "I hope not," I said, but my gut screamed otherwise. Klytheron here, GCDF panicking, and Lyra's eerie calm. It all added up to trouble I couldn't yet see. She met my gaze, a flicker of alertness in her eyes, and I realized, whatever was coming, she might have been expecting it all along. If I'd had any sense, I'd have locked the door and hidden under my desk. But no, I was still Zorak Veltrin, and the galaxy was about to drag me into a mess I couldn't talk my way out of. Chapter 4. The Conspiracy Unfolds. If someone had told me that a routine day at Nexus Station, already a nightmare of VIP egos and Borean stink, could turn into a full-blown disaster threatening my job, my sanity, and possibly my life, I'd have laughed with all four non-existent mouths of mine. But there I was, Zorak Veltrin, former chief security officer turned galactic punching bag, sitting in my security post with Lyra Vexen, the human special envoy who just flipped my world upside down. My console was screaming with alerts from every major diplomatic outfit in the galaxy. A Klytheron warship was lurking outside. And Lyra? She sat there, cool as a Zulian ice crystal, like she'd seen this chaos coming a mile away. I was starting to think I'd underestimated her and the universe by a long shot. The console was a mess, flashing messages like a Mulgar spice merchant on a sales spree. Center Prime Ministry. Where's Vexen? Jeden High Council. Transport delay? Threshing Consortium. Zulian technocracy. All piling on like I'd personally insulted their ancestors. I glanced at Lyra, her calm gaze unnerving me more than the alerts. You hearing this? I asked, voice cracking. They're losing it over you. She shrugged. I told you, Chief. It'll sort itself out. I wanted to yell that sorting itself out wasn't fast enough when the galaxy was banging down my door. But before I could, the station shook, not an explosion, but a deep rumble from the docking bays. No, not a quake, an alarm. I spun to the main screen, four hands hammering the controls. The Klytheron warship I'd spotted had launched a small craft, streaking toward Bay 92. Klytheron didn't mess with neutral stations, they were pirates, not politicians, unless tricks. I barked. Check that threshing signal from Bay 87 again. Now, Trix, my jittery assistant, leapt to his terminal, fingers trembling as he pulled up the data. Lyra tilted her head, eyes narrowing. Klytheron? She asked, her tone low but loaded. I nodded, avoiding her stare. Yeah. And I'd bet my fourth antenna they're not here for a friendly chat. Trix spun back, pale as a dead star. Chief, the threshing signal's a fake. Routed through Klytheron encryption. It's an order to someone inside the station. My Trescal mug hit the floor this time. An inside job? My mind flashed to Tharik Zindar. Could that smug draconian be a pawn without even knowing it? What do they want? I muttered, but Lyra answered before I could think. The Center Summit, she said, standing up. Humanity's about to gain full council membership. Some don't want that to happen. I gaped at her, four eyes wide. You mean they're after you? She nodded, and just then, my comm crackled with a panicked voice. Chief Veltrin. 3 unknowns breached the tech sector from Bay 92, armed. I turned to Lyra. Stay here, but she was already at the door, moving like a predator on the hunt. No time, she said. If it's Klytheron, I can handle them. I cursed in 26 languages, then bolted after her, yelling at Trix. Get security to the tech sector. Now. And lock down the lounge. Don't let Tharik slip away. The tech sector was a maze of gas pipes, humming machines, and tangled cables. A place where even my four-eyed vision could get lost. We reached it just as metal clanged ahead, and 3 shapes emerged from the dim plasma glow. Klytheron assassins. Tall and sleek in black armor, wielding energy rifles and glowing daggers. They spotted Lyra and charged. No hesitation. Down. I shouted, yanking my plasma pistol free. But Lyra ignored me. She rolled under a rifle blast, then sprang at the nearest one with speed I didn't think 2 legs could manage. I'd read humans were tough thanks to Earth's brutal gravity. But seeing it? Unreal. Lyra slammed her fist into the Klytheron's chest, his armor cracked like cheap glass. And he crumpled, groaning. She spun, kicking the second one into a pipe with a crunch, steam hissing as he hit. I fired at the third, clipping his shoulder, but he lunged at Lyra with his dagger. She caught his wrist, twisted. Snap went the bone, and drove his own blade into his leg. 3 down in under 30 seconds. I stood there, pistol still raised, jaw on the floor. What was that? I stammered. Lyra, breathing hard, wiped sweat from her brow. Klytheron don't like losing, she said, calm as if she'd just tidied a desk. They tried once before and failed. Now they're back. Before I could ask, failed when? The station trembled again, this time from hyperspace engines. I darted to a nearby screen. 3 Council Honor Guard ships had dropped in, surrounding the Klytheron warship outside. Cavalry's here. I sighed, but Lyra didn't relax. She fixed me with a serious look. That's why I need to reach Center Prime. Chief, the summit isn't just a meeting, it's humanity's vote for full membership. I'm carrying the deciding voice. My 4 arms went limp. Deciding voice? This human who just flattened 3 assassins was the key to shifting an entire species' place in the galaxy? You're kidding, I said, but she shook her head. Not kidding. And if Klytheron's here, they won't stop until I'm dead, or they're out of moves. The station-wide alarm blared, and Trix's voice crackled over the comm. Chief, the lounge is a mess. Thorok's demanding you. Now. I glanced at Lyra. She nodded like she'd expected this. Let's go, she said. We need to settle this before it gets worse. I followed her, brain spinning. If Thorok was a Klytheron puppet, if Lyra was this critical, then I just stumbled into a conspiracy bigger than Nexus itself. My career was already toast. But now, I might not even survive to see the ashes. Chapter 5. The Truth Ignites. If you'd told me that watching Lyra Vexen turn 3 Klytheron assassins into scrap metal with her bare hands would be the least insane part of my day at Nexus Station, I'd have laughed so hard my 4 antennae would have fallen off. But there I was, Zorak Veltrin, ex-chief security officer and current Galactic punching bag, stumbling back to the diplomatic lounge with Lyra after she just dropped the bomb that she was the deciding voice for humanity's bid at the Center Summit. My console was still buzzing with alerts. Council Honor Guard ships were locking down the Klytheron warship outside, and I was starting to think the universe had a personal vendetta against me. Little did I know, the real fireworks were about to start, and I don't mean the kind you enjoy with a mug of Trescal. The lounge was a powder keg when we burst in. The station-wide alarm screeched like a dying Rexithar, and through the massive viewport, the Honor Guard ships loomed, their plasma cannons glowing a menacing blue. Inside, the VIPs had lost all traces of dignity. Vex P diplomats scrambled over each other, 14 legs tangling in a chittering mess. The Jedin trio stood frozen, swaying like they'd short-circuited. Thorok Zindar was bellowing into his comm. Veltrin, get your scaly hide here now. His frilled neck puffed to comical proportions. I shot Lyra a look. She nodded, calm as ever, like she'd choreographed this chaos herself. Before I could open my mouth, the lounge doors slid open with a theatrical whoosh, and in strode Klyth Zorvan, Zulian legend, silver scales gleaming like a supernova, eyes sharp enough to cut through a draconian ego. The room went dead silent as he glided forward, every step radiating authority. Then, in a move that made my 4 jaws drop, he bowed to Lyra Vexen. A Zulian elder bowing to a human in a rumpled uniform? I pinched myself with all 4 hands to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Lyra, Klyth said, his voice a deep rumble that could soothe a mulger or terrify a threshing. Thank the eternal stars. When your distress signal hit, the council feared you'd been lost. Distress signal? My brain scrambled. Then it clicked. That ident chip she'd logged Thorok's denial with wasn't just a record, it was a panic button. Lyra smiled faintly, that creepy human smile again. No crisis, Father, she said, just a transport hiccup. I tried to keep it discreet. As we planned. Father? My 4 lungs stopped working. Lyra Vexen, adopted daughter of Klyth Zorvan? The lounge gasped as one. Thorok's frills deflated like a punctured balloon. And the Vex P Grand Envoy, Zithakar, scuttled forward, 14 legs trembling. Is this the Lyra Vexen who stopped the draconian grab at the Marzik cluster? He chittered, voice quivering. Klyth nodded, a glint of pride in his eyes. The very same. The air thickened as Klyth turned to the crowd, his presence commanding silence. For those unaware, he announced, Special Envoy Lyra Vexen is the Council's chosen voice for humanity's full membership bid. In 15 rotations, she's resolved 27 interspecies conflicts, speaks 41 galactic tongues, and boosted trade by 22%. He paused, Then dropped a bombshell with a smirk. She's also the peacemaker of Proxima and my adopted daughter. Saved my life from pirates in the center incident. Gasps echoed like a shockwave. Tharic staggered, scales paling. But, she's just a lieutenant, he sputtered. Pointing at her uniform, her rank. Lyra turned to him. And for the first time, I saw a spark in her eyes, not anger. But something fiercer, like a star igniting. This uniform honors my roots in the Terran Defense Force, she said, voice cutting through the room. I wear it to stay grounded, and to disarm new species in talks. Less intimidating, you see. Less intimidating? After she just smashed Klytheron armor like it was tinfoil? I nearly choked on my own disbelief. Then the real chaos hit. A deafening boom rocked the lounge as a plasma bolt grazed the viewport. Fired from the Klytheron ship outside, apparently not fully subdued by the honor guard. Glass cracked, alarms wailed, and the VIPs screamed. I dove for cover, yelling, "Tricks, status," over the comms. But Lyra didn't flinch. She grabbed a fallen Jeden rep's comm device, patched into the honor guard, and barked in perfect Zulian. Focus fire on their ventral cannons, now. The ships outside pivoted, unleashing a barrage that silenced the Klytheron attack in seconds. The lounge stared, slack-jawed, as she tossed the comm back like it was nothing. Kalith stepped forward, unfazed by the near disaster. The shuttle will now carry its true priority passenger, Special Envoy Vexen. He declared, "You're welcome to join, but the honor guard will escort us." The Jeden trio swayed, speaking in unison. "We're honored to travel with the Peacemaker." Zithakar, still shaking, extended all 14 limbs in a rare Vex P gesture of ultimate respect, something I'd only read about in history vids. "Envoy Vexen," he chittered, "the Dominion offers you our highest seat. An honor." Lyra nodded. "The honor's mine, Grand Envoy. Maybe we can discuss your Outer Rim proposal en route. I've got ideas to ease threshing concerns while preserving your claims." Zithkar's eyes bulged with delight. As the VIPs shuffled to board, Lyra leading the way, Kalith lingered, sidling up to Tharic with a predator's grin. "You know," he said casually, "the last fool to insult my daughter now monitors methane clouds in the boot's void." Dull work. Tharoc's scales turned a sickly gray, and I made a mental note to steer clear of him forever. I stood there, watching Lyra disappear into the shuttle, feeling like the galaxy's biggest idiot. She'd gone from a nobody I'd mocked to the center of a diplomatic supernova in under an hour. The cracked viewport smoked behind me, the lounge a wreck, and I muttered to Trix over the comms, "Next time a human walks in, assume they're here to ruin my life." He laughed nervously, but I wasn't joking. Whatever Lyra Vexen was, she'd just lit a fuse, and I had a sinking feeling it was still burning. Chapter 6. The Center Summit, a War of Words. Alright, folks, if I'd had to pick between facing down a trio of Klytheron assassins in Nexus Station's tech sector or standing in the middle of the Galactic Council's Center Summit with all its pompous delegates, I'd take the assassins any day. At least I could shoot back. I'm Zorak Veltrin, the guy who went from Nexus Station's chief security officer to a galactic cautionary tale. And I wasn't at the summit to see Lyra Vexen work her magic. Nope, I was stuck piecing it together from reports and rumors after she left my station on that shuttle, flanked by honor guard ships and a gaggle of awestruck VIPs. But what she did at Center Prime, it's the kind of story that makes you wonder if humans are secretly the galaxy's biggest wildcard. And I'm still kicking myself for laughing at her back in the lounge. Picture the Center Summit like a gladiator arena. But instead of blades and blood, it's all sharp words and sharper egos. Set in a massive domed hall on Center Prime. The walls shimmer with bioluminescent panels. Seats float in tiers for the 27 founding species. And the air hums with the weight of history. Grand Envoy Zithakar of the Vex P sat front and center. 14 legs folded primly, his bulbous eyes glinting with pride. The Jeden Collective's 3 reps formed their usual creepy circle, muttering in sync. Korvax, a threshing delegate with a temper as foul as his spittle, glowered from his atmospheric pod, ready to argue anything into the ground. And there was Lyra Vexen, stepping onto the central podium, a tiny figure in her olive-green Terran uniform, dwarfed by the grandeur but radiating a quiet fire that made the room pause. The summit kicked off with the usual drivel, endless ceremonies, speeches about galactic unity that everyone knew was a lie. Humanity, after 30 rotations as mere observers, was finally up for full council membership, a leap from sidelines to main stage. But not everyone was thrilled. As Lyra took the floor, Korvax lurched up, his scaly bulk quivering. "Humans don't belong here," he hissed, spittle spraying the table. "They're warlike, immature, unreliable. Have you seen their wars? No history, no civilization. Just apes who stumbled into the stars." The hall buzzed. Some Vex P chittered agreement, though Zithakar stayed silent, maybe remembering Lyra's cool-headedness on the shuttle. The Jedans swayed, whispering odds of human failure. I'd have bet Lyra would stick to her Nexus playbook, calm, steady, unflappable, but she surprised me, even from a distance. She stepped forward, voice ringing out like a blade striking metal. "Delegate Korvax," she said, switching to the threshing's grating. Saw-like tongue. A move that made his eyes bulge. "If you think humanity's worthless, let me tell you a story." She recounted the Vornix incident. 10 rotations back, a minor species, the Peltheri, faced extinction when their star went supernova. No council race intervened. Vex P called it inefficient. Threshings said the weak deserved to die. Humans, with a handful of rickety ships and barely a rotation of spacefaring under their belts, evacuated 80% of the Peltheri, braving radiation and gravity that'd crush a draconian. "We lack your 12.000-year legacy," she said, "but we act when others watch." Korvax snarled, but the hall went quiet. Lyra didn't stop. She turned to the Mulgar, her voice softening into their melodic tongue. "And you, poets of trade, hear this from your pre-space canon." She recited a verse about compassion piercing the void, her tone weaving through the air like a breeze over Mulgar plains. The Mulgar delegation, sappy as ever, teared up, their scales glistening. Then she faced the Draconians, using their ancient honorific, guardians beneath the stars, with flawless diction that made their stoic reps leap up. Clapping like hatchlings, she spoke to the Vex P in their chittering dialect, citing a treaty Zithakar penned, earning a rare nod from him. For 20 minutes, she addressed all 27 founding species in their own languages, not just greetings, but full speeches laced with their culture, history, and pride. No one in council history had dared, or could, pull that off. Korvax tried one last jab. "Words," he spat, "they prove nothing." Lyra smiled, a real one this time. Sharp and bright. "Words saved the Peltheri," she shot back. "Words ended the Masaki-Thorian feud you couldn't solve in 200 rotations. Words will seat humanity here, if you let them." The hall held its breath. And then Caliph Zorvan rose from the observer's bench, his silver scales catching the light. "I'll vouch for her," he said, voice booming. Lyra stopped a war in Proxima Center by making foes talk instead of fight. "She doesn't just speak, she delivers." He fixed Korvax with a stare that could melt steel. "If Threshings can't see that, maybe your definition of civilized needs work." The room exploded, not in argument, but applause. Mulgar sobbed openly. Draconians roared approval, and even the Jedans stopped swaying to nod. Zithakar raised a leg for silence. "The Vex P stand with humanity," he declared, his chitter firm. Korvax slumped, defeated, his spittle drying up. The vote came fast, unanimous. A first in council records. Lyra stood there, no longer small, as subspace channels lit up with the news. Humanity wasn't just in, they'd rewritten the game. "I heard about it days later from a Nexus tech over a lukewarm Trescal. She spoke 27 languages to make a point?" I asked, incredulous. He grinned. "No, Zorak. She spoke 27 languages to prove humans don't just survive, they belong." I sat there, drink in hand, marveling. Lyra hadn't just won a seat, she'd turned the galaxy's sneer into awe. And me? I was the fool who'd chuckled at her in the lounge, now left wondering if I'd ever catch up to the storm she'd unleashed. Chapter 7. Fallout and Lessons. You'd think, folks, that after Lyra Vexen turned the Center Summit into her personal stage and dragged humanity kicking and screaming into full Galactic Council membership, things would settle down, right? That Zorak Veltrin, Could kick back with a Trescal and enjoy the quiet after the storm she'd whipped up at Nexus Station? Nope. The universe doesn't work that way. It's got a mean streak wider than a Vex P's ego. And it wasn't done kicking me around yet. Lyra's victory didn't just shake up the galaxy. It sent shockwaves that turned my life into a cautionary tale and then threw a Klytheron-sized wrench right back into the mix. Buckle up, because this fallout's got teeth. After Lyra's 27-language masterclass at Center Prime hit subspace channels, Nexus Station became the galaxy's favorite punching bag. Everyone wanted to know how we'd botched security so badly that a special envoy got stuck in our lounge while Klytheron assassins ran wild. The tech sector was still a mess, pipes hissing, cables sparking, while dark market vendors started peddling Lyra Vexen victory badges made of cheap alloy. I got hauled into Administrator Plexthan's office, the Zulian big boss whose scales vibrated with fury like a plasma coil about to blow. "Veltrin," she hissed, her voice slicing through me. "How did our systems miss an Omega-level envoy? How did Klytheron waltz in under your watch?" I stood there, 4 hands clasped, trying not to shrink. "Ma'am," I said, "the system's programmed with assumptions. A human female pops up. It tags her as low priority. Algorithm glitch. Not my fault." Plexthan's eyes narrowed to slits. "An algorithm you oversaw. Veltrin, were you chief security officer or just a 4-eyed tourist?" Ouch. The verdict was swift. Demotion. No more chief gig. I was now a Galactic security lecturer, sent to outposts to drone about my screw-up as a warning to others. Career torched, but at least I got paid to mock myself. Tharik Zindar fared worse, banished to a methane gas giant in the Boots Void. Titled, Atmospheric Particle Documenter. He counts clouds now. I heard he sent a subspace SOS, but it got drowned out by static. Even Kalith Zorvan chuckled when he heard. The real fallout, though, was how the galaxy saw humans. Pre-Lyra, they were the punchline, newbies with junk ships and weird idioms. Post-center, the dismissive smirks vanished. Galactic Academy courses on human studies spiked 300%, language, culture, even their knack for turning scrap into starships. Grand Envoy Zithakar, the Vex P stickler, launched a cultural exchange with Earth. Vex P who'd called humans flying primates, now swapping notes with them. I'd bet my last Trescal that Lyra's stunt made every species rethink their biases. Caution crept in where condescension once ruled, and I couldn't help but marvel at how she'd flipped the script. 6 rotations later, I was prepping for a lecture on some backwater station when a small package arrived. Inside, a human medal, Patience Award. A tech later explained, plus a handwritten note. "Chief Veltrin," it read, "thanks for the most memorable transit of my diplomatic career. The best lessons come from unexpected blunders. Center wouldn't have hit so hard without your help. Regards. No hard feelings, Lyra Vexen." I stared at it, dumbfounded. She didn't just forgive me, she thanked me? Humans weren't just tough, they had this terrifying knack for finding value in failure. I pinned the medal to my vest, a reminder of the day I'd been the galaxy's biggest fool. But the story didn't end there. One night, I was in a dingy bar on Zethar Station, a nowhere pit where you hide from debts or drink away regrets, nursing a Trescal when my personal console beeped. An encrypted signal, no sender. I opened it, and a distorted voice rasped. "Veltrin, you think it's over? Klytheron doesn't forget." The screen flickered, showing a Klytheron warship lurking in the ZETHAR-9 nebula, followed by text. Nexus was the start. Vexen won't live to see humanity rise. My 4 hearts pounded. I'd assumed Klytheron slunk off after Nexus. Wrong. They were back, and they meant business. I bolted from the bar, sprinting to the station's comm hub, 4 hands shaking as I patched a warning to GCDF command. "Klytheron ship, ZETHAR-9. Targeting Lyra Vexen, move fast." The reply was static. Then a council patrol ship roared into view outside, engines blazing. A human officer, tall, red-haired, built like he could punch through a hull, stormed in. "Veltrin?" he barked. I nodded, antennae twitching. "Got your alert. Vexen's on a diplomatic run near Zethar. She's fine. Thanks to you. We caught their trail just in time." He clapped my shoulder. nearly knocking me over. She says thanks again. No medal this time. But you're owed a Trescal. I blinked, reeling. Saved her again? I just wanted to survive the night. The officer grinned. She's got a knack for trouble, and you've got a knack for bailing her out. He left, and I slumped against the console. Trescal forgotten. Klytheron wasn't done, and Lyra was still in their crosshairs. But if she could turn my blunder at Nexus into a galactic win, maybe she'd outsmart them too. Humans didn't just endure, they thrived on the edge. And I was starting to think that edge was sharper than any of us knew. Chapter 8. A New Darkness Rises. So, folks, here's where I thought I'd finally get a breather, maybe sip a Trescal in peace. Bask in the glow of accidentally saving Lyra Vexen from Klytheron twice. And call it a day. I'm Zorak Veltrin, the four-eyed ex-chief security officer turned galactic laughingstock turned reluctant hero. And after the Center Summit and that close call on SCI-FI Station, I figured the universe might cut me some slack. Wrong. The universe doesn't do slack, it does sucker punches. And this one hit harder than a draconian tail whip. By the time this tale ends, I wasn't sure if Lyra was the luckiest human alive or if I was just cursed to stumble into her orbit every time the galaxy decided to flex its chaos muscles. 6 rotations after Lyra's summit win, I was still on SCI-FI Station, a grubby little outpost where the air smelled like burnt circuits and regret. I'd just dodged another lecture gig, telling wide-eyed recruits how I'd botched Nexus security, and was nursing a lukewarm Trescal when my console pinged with that encrypted Klytheron threat. Nexus was the start. Vexen won't live to see humanity rise. I'd alerted GCDF, saved Lyra's hide again, and figured that was my cosmic quota filled. But a few days later, as I packed to leave SCI-FI for another backwater post, my console chirped again, this time with a direct message from Lyra herself. My 4 hearts skipped a beat as I opened it. Chief Veltrin. It read, she still called me Chief. Humans and their quirks. Thanks for SCI-FI. I'm headed to a classified summit in the Orionis cluster to negotiate with a new species. Something's off, though. Got this encrypted file. Check it for me. Stay sharp. Attached was a garbled audio clip. I played it, and my antennae shot up as a distorted voice hissed. Vexen, you think Center was the end? You've only made Klytheron stronger. The Shadow Waker has risen. And no council will save you this time. It cut off with coordinates, not in council space, but on the edge of the Forbidden Zone. A stretch of void even Klytheron pirates avoided. I pulled up a star map. The chords pointed to the Maw of Nothing. A black nebula whispered about in old spacer tales as the tomb of a species so ancient it predated the Vex P. The Shadow Waker? I muttered, 4 hands trembling. This wasn't just Klytheron revenge, it was something older. Nastier. I flashed back to Nexus. Lyra smashing assassins like they were toys. And that SCI-FI threat, if Klytheron had allies this deep, Lyra, and humanity, were in over their heads. I fired off a reply. Special Envoy Vexen. This isn't just Klytheron. Chords hit the Maw of Nothing, don't go alone. Alerting Council. But the send failed. Subspace jammed. A red flag screaming trouble. I bolted from my quarters, racing to SCI-FI's docking bay where that council patrol from the last scare was still stationed. I hammered on the command hatch until the red-haired human officer, big, broad, like he could wrestle a threshing, yanked it open. Lyra's in danger, I shouted, shoving my console at him with the audio file. He listened, face hardening. Maw of Nothing? That's no Klytheron turf, it's a high-security no-go zone. If she's near Orionis, he trailed off. But I got it. Trap. Big time. We've got to move, I said, 4 fists clenched. She saved the galaxy once. I'm not letting her die because I sat on my tail. The officer nodded, barking orders. The patrol ship's engines roared to life. And we blasted into hyperspace. Stars streaking past as I gripped the bridge railing. Replaying every Lyra moment. Her calm in the lounge. Her fists in the tech sector. Her voice at center. We hit Orionis cluster's edge. And the radar screamed. Lyra's ship. A faint blip. Surrounded by 3 Klytheron vessels, and something else. A massive, jagged shadow loomed on the scopes. Dwarfing everything. Its silhouette pulsing like a living void. What in the 7 nebulas is that? I yelped. The officer stared, voice low. Not Klytheron. Something's controlling them. We closed in, weapons hot, but Lyra's signal flickered, then vanished. The Klytheron ships scattered as the shadow pulsed again. And a new blip appeared on the radar. Coordinates deeper in the maw of nothing. She's gone. Where'd she go? I demanded, panic rising. The officer shook his head. No debris. Either she jumped, or that thing took her. Took her? My 4 stomachs churned. The shadow shifted, then faded into the nebula, leaving us with nothing but static and a ghost trail. I clutched the patience medal Lyra gave me, staring into the void. She's out there, I said, more to myself than anyone. She's survived worse. The officer clapped my shoulder. Human habit. Still jarring. If anyone can outrun that, it's Vexen. But whatever's waking up in the maw, we're not ready for it. He turned to his crew. Set course. Follow that trail. Veltrin, you're with us. As the ship surged forward, I looked out at the stars. Lyra's last words echoing, stay sharp. I'd laughed at her once. Underestimated her, and she'd turned it into a lesson that shook the galaxy. Now she was missing. Klytheron was scheming, and some ancient shadow waker was stirring. Was this humanity's next test, or mine? I gripped my imaginary Trescal, muttering, you owe me a drink. Lyra, don't you dare die before I collect. The maw loomed ahead, dark and endless, whispering secrets older than the council itself. I didn't know if Lyra was alive, if we'd find her, or what waited in that void. But one thing was clear. The story wasn't over, not for her. Not for me, not for the galaxy. Somewhere out there, between the stars and the shadows, a new chapter was brewing, and I had a sinking feeling I'd be dragged right into it.